So if we actually take a look, both of their Laprases, the one from Out of Pocket and the one from Snotsss, actually are both running Skull Bash, I believe.
All right, so that's going to be one advantage that Pocket had in the last match that he won't have here. Really important as well, this Corviknight. We've talked about it so much. Sand Attack, Iron Head, Sky Attack. It's such a great core breaker. It's going to take very few sources of super effective damage from Pocket's team. Fire Punch from the Diggersby is realistically the only thing.
I am very interested again to see that Furret and that Corviknight pairing going into this team from Out of Pocket. We saw Nighttime Clasher really struggle with that core. I have to imagine that Snotsss, we're either gonna see the Furret or the Corviknight or potentially both in all of these matchups just because it's so strong into this team.
Yeah, I mean, making the call that Malamar's a really great Pokemon into Lapras is great for Pocket, but I think this team that they built together did lack a little bit of an answer for the Corviknight, maybe not expecting it to be quite as strong in this meta or not being able to make it quite this far, because even with its positive matchups, it just doesn't win it that hard. Here we go. Game number 1 of the Grand Finals. It's going to be Malamar into Tinkaton, a great lead for Snotsss.
Yeah, we're going to start to see those fairy winds start to accumulate damage, and then Malamar has to watch out for that heavy-hitting Play Rough, and we're going to see Out of Pocket throw a superpower just before the Play Rough is reached by Snotsss, and then I'm anticipating a quick swap out into a different save swap. This time, it's at regular Jumpluff, and we know that regular Jumpluff into Tinkaton is a much safer matchup than that Shadow Jumpluff that his teammates were running.
I think this is the 4th or 5th time that we've seen Out of Pocket build up to the superpower, throw right before the Play Rough, and then immediately pivot out into another Pokemon. A second Play Rough coming through into the Jumpluff, not going to threaten a knockout, and the Tinkaton is getting a little bit low, but it's still well outside of an Acrobatics.
Here, and since the Acrobatics is not going to knock out the Tinkaton, Snotsss can safely no-shield this and then work to start building up to another attack. Can he get to a Play Rough? Not before Out of Pocket is able to throw a charge attack to clear Tinkaton off the field. This is going to give some potential farm for the Malamar, but the Malamar is going to be chipped away quite a bit and is either going to have to tank an attack or Snotsss is going to have to shield.
Shield comes up. This is a great shield given that this is an Acrobatics coming from the Jumpluff. Farm down not going to be possible. Immediate pivot into his own Malamar, and as they said, Malamar's the best answer to that Lapras in the back, so Snotsss staying in, which is going to be actually really great for him because Pocket in the back has Diggersby, and Lapras does very well into Diggersby.
Going right for the foul play here, just to soften up the opposing Malamar a little bit. We do have that Lapras sitting in the back that is going to be very, very healthy. In the match against Nighttime Clasher, Out of Pocket was able to scare away the opposing Lapras. That's not really the case here.
Foul play getting shielded up. Looks like there is still a shield from Snots's side, able to shield up this superpower. The one issue I see for Pocket here is that now that he's thrown the superpower, he's really showing that he wants to switch out pretty close. Looks like it's an overfarm and a catch still. No shield now. This is going to soak up all of the energy from this Malamar. Now Pocket, with a shield remaining, is looking to be in a pretty comfortable position, whereas just a few seconds ago, it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, so you could see Snotsss kind of nodding and giving a little smirk like, yeah, you got me there. Good catch. We can see Out of Pocket utilizing his utilizing this Protect Shield, and I believe that is the final one of this game, and then very comfortably getting to this foul play.
Triple resisted Sideways is likely going to take about 7.5 years for this Lapras to farm down the Malamar. Going to be able to get to a superpower in very... Actually not going to be able to dip right away. I think the switch clock won't be able to be up quite yet, so going to get a little more farm on Snots's Lapras. Actually just in time, able to pivot. That Lapras is quite into the yellow at this point.
Yeah, Scorching Sands is going to start to threaten a knockout, and you can see Snotsss already picking up his pen and thinking, okay, that didn't work. I left the Corviknight on the bench. I left the Furret on the bench. Maybe that wasn't the strategy, looking to maybe switch some things up for game number 2. OutOfPoket taking an early game.
Yeah, Pocket's going to be really happy with this, with a potential team disadvantage, or what I feel like is a team comp disadvantage given how safe Corviknight is for Snotsss, but leaving it on the bench for game number 1. That catch in the end game on to his jump left, very impactful, minimizing the amount of damage that could be done to his own Malamar. 2 Sidewave users in the back, just does not deal fast attack damage to that Malamar.
OutOfPoket, we can see using that superpower on the Malamar, and here we could see that catch of the jump up. That was key, and you could kind of see Snotsss kind of giving a little head nod at that time. Like, yeah, a little bit of respect, just saying, you got me.
Superpower doing a large chip into that Lapras. However, Pocket Switch Clock coming up at the perfect time. Scorching Sands more than enough to pick up the knockout here, and that secured game number 1 for OutOfPoket. OutOfPoket is on the loser side of the bracket, so he does need to reset in order to go into a final best of 5. Snotsss has a little bit of wiggle room, but you don't want to let it get away, as the momentum can be key in these best of 5 matches.
And we have Corviknight coming down from the sky to attack the Malamar. Sidewaves are resisted on Corviknight, but these foul plays are going to be neutral. OutOfPoket builds up to about 1.5 before throwing the first foul play. And you can see Snotsss brought the Furret in the back.
Yeah, Furret in the back is going to be able to line up into potentially that Diggersby after the switch. Catching the Ironhead bait here, going to be a little bit less effective than a Sky Attack. However, less energy is good, and now able to pivot into the Furret, going to be able to land a super effective Trailblaze right at the same time as a Scorching Sands.
Yeah, you could see, I saw OutOfPoket do a little shrug there too, like, okay. So he's kind of rethinking his strategy here. So for landing the Trailblaze, now these Sucker Punches are going to be even more effective, because every time you use a Trailblaze, you boost yourself 1 stage of attack.
Diggersby is so bulky, I don't think a Sucker Punch down will be feasible here, especially after that attack drop. A Swift will need to be utilized before the next charge attack. It is a charge attack tie for it, winning that over the Diggersby. Neutral attack now, 1 stage boosted, 1 stage dropped. Swift more than enough to pick up the knockout.
And Furret stands strong. I absolutely love this Pokemon's attack animation. Just kind of wiggling around, walking around on the stage. And then OutOfPoket going to throw a foul play, attempting to knock out the Furret. Looks like Snotsss prepared to let that go. Still has a fully healthy Tinkaton in the back. OutOfPoket is going to have to throw a couple of superpowers to even put a dent in Tinkaton. Snotsss shielding the first one, which makes a lot of sense because the second superpower is going to be less effective, as Malamar has now dropped its attack by 1 stage.
And OutOfPoket has shown a willingness to just go straight for those superpowers time and time again. Corviknight now coming into the jump lift. Super effective Sky Attacks are available. However, OutOfPoket does have a shield, and he has a lot of energy. Shield number 1 comes up, goes for the acrobatics. This is not quite enough to threaten a knockout, but might put it into Fairy Wind range.
Yeah, the one hard thing that Corviknight has to deal with is it takes a really long time to get to all of its charge attacks, and Sand Attack it doesn't really do a lot of damage, especially not to a regular Jumpluff.
A regular Jumpluff, flying grass type, triple resisted. I have to imagine the damage is just 1. Play Rough now coming through, going to be able to do good neutral damage to the Jumpluff. I don't think it's going to do about 50%. It'll be a little bit less than that. So maybe with the additional Fairy Winds, he might need a few after this next Play Rough.
The next attack is coming through. Snotsss deciding to let it go, recognizing that the hardest hitting attack left in the game is probably going to be coming from that Malamar. It's going to be a superpower. That's what Snotsss really has to watch out for. Snotsss actually went right for the Play Rough. No shield from OutOfPoket. What's on your mind, Nick?
I'm thinking he needed to farm a little bit more, but I think it's fairly inconsequential given that he did not knock out with that play rough. Another acrobatics being launched here. This is going to do a lot of good resisted damage. Again, good resisted damage doesn't feel like it makes sense, but acrobatics is just that strong of a move. Bulldoze coming through now, going to get shielded from out of pocket. I think the side wave down is imminent, and out of pocket might have secured game number 2.
There is the Bulldoze. How much? You still need a little bit more energy. Tinkaton not quite able to get to the Bulldoze. Out of pocket is very close. He is 1 game away from resetting this bracket. Again, I've been saying it all day. If anyone can do this, it's Pocket.
And Snotsss just not quite finding the right key here to be able to tackle Pocket. Pocket seems to have been able to take a lot of key takeaways from watching the winners finals of this this tournament, being able to see how this team matches up into Snotsss and what Pokemon Snotsss may or may not be leaning into. I do like the addition of the Corviknight and the Tinkaton into that Game 2 team, leaning away from the Lapras given how strong that Malamar has been for out of pocket time and time again.
Pocket really just leaning on Malamar lead with Diggersby and Jumpluff. He thinks that's the combination. This is the formula. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Maybe he's going to run it back for game number 3.
Formioli, show me the Pokemon-ioni. No? Okay, that's fine.
No, absolutely not, Alpha Phoebe. Absolutely not, as our trainers are going ahead and getting locked in. So thinking about what Snotsss has to do to pull the momentum back. Even if he loses, he still has another best of 5 that he could potentially play and win. But out of pocket is on a roll right now, and it is tough to stop a boulder running downhill. We've got Malamar into Tinkaton again.
Except I believe this is the first time it is Malamar on Snots's side into Out of Pocket's Malamar. Maybe he'll have picked up some knowledge from Out of Pocket about how to play this matchup. Throwing a little bit earlier and getting the superpower in I believe 1 Fairy Wind before the play rough was loaded. Swapping to Lapras is answered by the hardest check to Lapras of the Malamar.
He said play wolf. These guys got that dog in them. Continuing on, we've got that Malamar going ahead and going right for the foul play, not wanting to debuff himself right away. Out of pocket opts for the foul play instead of the super effective superpower. Snotsss going for that Sparkling Aria to try to get some nice neutral damage, but out of pocket is really close to another attack. He has quite a bit of energy on the Malamar already. Psywave charges up these attacks really remarkably quickly.
Looks like a charge attack tied there. Superpower now coming through, going to be doing super effective damage, able to pick up the knockout. In comes the Tinkaton. Attack and defense have fallen. However, I believe Out of Pocket can very comfortably reach a superpower here and potentially pivot out into his back Pokemon.
There is that superpower. It is connecting. It does not do a lot of neutral damage, but it's one of the heavier hitting things that Out of Pocket can leverage going into the Tinkaton. The other heavy hitter is right here in that Diggersby, being able to utilize Scorching Sands.
Quick Attack is going to be resisted by this Tinkaton. However, those Scorching Sands are very scary, as well as Fire Punch doing super effective damage, but it does not have that same type attack bonus. I think it'll be very key to see how Snotsss utilizes this Tinkaton, how he decides to utilize his Malamar in the back as well, as it is very healthy and it takes less overall damage from a move from the Diggersby than the Tinkaton would.
I'm thinking that Snotsss is going to have to switch out at some point here to bring in the Malamar, because if you're using your Malamar, you're probably using Superpower. You want to be able to reset the debuff at some point. So I'm wondering if Snotsss is going to utilize a strategy and attempt to switch out here soon.
Really smart play by Snotsss there, recognizing that Out of Pocket wants to maintain his Diggersby on the field of play, going for the Bulldoze as opposed to the play rough, able to pull a shield for significantly less energy. Another Bulldoze is now loaded, being thrown just before the Fire Punch from Out of Pocket. Out of Pocket lets this Bulldoze go. I think it's going to be just enough to knock out.
Bulldoze is not very impressive, but it is enough to knock out the Diggersby. Out of Pocket had a Bulldoze ready to go. This is not enough to knock out a Tinkaton. Maybe if the Tinkaton had been debuffed by a Bulldoze a couple of times, but no such luck here. Snotsss has his own Bulldoze, but then also has that Malamar in the back.
No shield from Out of Pocket. Imagine an immediate switch out into the Malamar, but the Play Rough is loaded. This is super effective damage into the Malamar. This is very likely to knock out, and then a Fairy Wind down of the Tinkaton in the back for Snotsss is going to happen. There's significantly less health on that Tinkaton for Snotsss, and that is game number 3 for Out of Pocket. We have a bracket reset.
That is incredible. Out of Pocket's in. We're doing it again. I did it once. We're going to do it one more time. He is probably game to try to 3-0 Snotsss again. Let's see if he can do it. But what do you think, Alpha Thief?
I think Snotsss is going to need to mentally reset. It's really tough to come back into a second set. The winners finals, the grand finals reset and kind of reset your nerves, reset your motivation, and really try to focus on what ways you can improve going into the second set best of 5. You have to forget about that first set. It means nothing at this point. The slate has been cleared, and you really, really need to find a way to gain some momentum going into the next set of battles.
Here we can see kind of the end of that final battle where Out of Pocket is able to land the Play Rough, send the Malamar packing, and then Fairy Wind down the opposing Tinkaton because Out of Pocket was able to preserve just enough health on his own Tinkaton. Just needed to have a little bit more than the other Tinkaton to be able to pull that off. Taking a look at their teams, Pocket brought Malamar and Diggersby every single game. Brought the Jumpluff for the first 2 and then switched it up to Tinkaton in the third. Snotsss only brought, the only Pokemon that was consistent in those 3 games was Tinkaton. Otherwise, we saw some switching up. We saw the Lapras and Malamar paired together. Then in the middle game, brought the Ferret and Corviknight together. I'm wondering what Snotsss needs to do to be able to break up Pocket's team.
I think lean a little bit more onto Corviknight is my first thought. It's going to do fairly well into Diggersby. It's going to do fairly well into Tinkaton. And it's going to do quite well into that Jumpluff that Pocket has been bringing fairly frequently, as well as the Malamar. Malamar, of course, is very potent with the Psy-Wave damage. It has the same type attack bonus on that, and it's going to be able to do neutral damage with those foul plays, so it's not a one-sided matchup. But if Snotsss can utilize the bulk of that Pokemon, as well as the threat of the heavy-hitting charged attacks, maybe he can find a little bit more wiggle room for his Tinkaton to shine over Out of Pockets.
Perhaps. I'm wondering too, Corviknight was not as popular in this tournament, obviously as much as Tinkaton was. Why do you think like fewer people are seeing Corviknight and its potential? Because Snotsss certainly saw it, put it on his team, and piloted it to the grand finals.
Yeah, I think the biggest drawback of Corviknight is its fast attack, sand attack. It just does not allow Corviknight to have any fast attack pressure, especially against some of the Pokemon you want it to fare quite well against, such as that Jumpluff. Triple resisted sand attacks, gonna do 1 damage each time, and it doesn't charge energy that fast. So it's just a very lackluster fast attack. Its other option, Steel Wing, is similarly very lackluster, but it has a worse offensive typing. Ground typing being one of the best offensive typings in Pokemon over all of the series is just a little bit better, even though it doesn't have the same type attack bonus.
But what is Corviknight specifically going to be targeting here on Out of Pocket's team? What is it going to be doing really well? Why do you think he needs to lean into the Corviknight?
Well, the Pokemon that he's been bringing, right? You said the Jumpluff, the Malamar, the Tinkaton does quite well. It's quite safe into all 3 of those Pokemon, as opposed to some of the other Pokemon that he's been bringing, where maybe if you don't have the great alignment, or maybe you're down on shields, you're a little bit more threatened by a Play Rough. Right? That Play Rough going into the Malamar in game number 3 there was the key piece of victory for Out of Pocket, able to pull the shields back earlier. If you're using a Pokemon like Corviknight, maybe you can save those shields for your Malamar to protect it from a heavy-hitting, super effective Play Rough.
These are all things that these trainers are thinking about right now. Out of Pocket is going to be able to rely on his experience. We just saw on the screen all of his accolades. Nick, you mentioned it earlier. Out of Pocket is one of the most, if not the most decorated trainer in all of North America. Snotsss, this is his first Grand Finals, first time up on the stage, and we are at a Grand Finals bracket reset, best of 5, and bringing the Corviknight, it's met by Malamar.
Yeah, so this is going to be a position where I have to imagine the Malamar is going to be willing to invest shields where the Corviknight is not necessarily looking to. An attempted catch from out of pocket. The Diggersby is now met by the Furret, and the Furret's sucker punches are starting to add up, but a little bit of a slow swap from Snotsss means that the Scorching Sands is coming through first before the initial Trailblaze.
And that Trailblaze is reached right now. The Furret is going to be able to start ramping up. The sucker punches are going to do more and more damage with each subsequent Trailblaze. And the first one hits for super effective. It's doing quite well. Furret is not going to be able to reach an attack, though, before Diggersby is able to get to a second Scorching Sands.
Scorching Sands coming through, going to be able to almost pick up the knockout. Swift is loaded, I think because of the attack raise from that Trailblaze. It's going to be really close to knocking out. Not quite, though. Going to be switch advantage for out of pocket.
Switch advantage, but now this Corviknight, you mentioned how Corviknight is really slow to get to its charged attacks. Now it has an opportunity to build up a little bit of energy. How are you feeling about throwing this Iron Head here?
I wish he just took the Fire Punch. He threw it in order to avoid the Fire Punch, but I don't think the Fire Punch, although it is the only move that's going to be super effective into the Corviknight, is all that threatening coming from a Diggersby. This foul play probably deals a little bit more damage, and now because he's so slow to build up energy with this Corviknight, I think that the energy would have been utilized better elsewhere.
Yeah, and Corviknight is unfortunately for Snotsss not going to be able to line up as well against this Tinkaton. This is where Snotsss probably wanted to have the Corviknight spend the bulk of its health taking down the Tinkaton. Now the Corviknight's almost in the red. It's not going to be able to do as much here.
Iron Head is going to be neutral, super effective against the Fairy typing of Tinkaton, resisted by the Steel typing of Tinkaton. Second Iron Head coming through, going to threaten this Tinkaton, and now pulling the first shield away from out of pocket.
And we can see the Corviknight slowly building up, getting to the Iron Head. Out of pocket, maybe a little bit of a miscue, allowing the Iron Head to get thrown first.
Iron Head, I think, is going to be just shy of knocking out, and I don't think the Sand attack down will be all that feasible. I have to imagine Snotsss will let this go, bring in his own Tinkaton. Oh no, actually shielding up, maybe a little bit afraid of a Bulldoze defense drop later.
And here comes the Tinkaton coming in, maybe, and has an opportunity maybe to reset debuffs. Both trainers still have 2 Pokemon available, so we still have some switches. We still have some dance left to go in this battle.
You can see Out of Pocket is a little bit unhappy with how this is going because the Bulldoze was thrown immediately. He was forced to no shield because a later Bulldoze would do more damage, but now that the defense has been dropped, again. A second superpower coming through is going to lower the attack. It's not going to do enough to pick up the knockout. The Fairy Wind Down's going to be possible, but how much energy does Out of Pocket's own Tinkaton have?
We are about to find out as the Tinkaton hits the field. Snotsss' Tinkaton throwing the Bulldoze right away, and I did not get a chance to see the energy levels on Out of Pocket's Tinkaton. We're going to find it now. It has the Bulldoze, it has the Play Rough.
Throwing the Bulldoze right before Snotsss was able to reach a Bulldoze. However, it is a Flying and Steel type in the back. He does not have enough health, I think, to reach a player if he's going to need to throw the Bulldoze. This is singly resisted. This is a defense-weighted Pokemon. Will it knock out?
I'm not sure. We're about to find out. Tinkaton uses Bulldoze. I still see some health there with 1 HP. The Corviknight stands tall. It stays flying in the sky. Snotsss claims his first game win here in the Grand Finals.
That is huge for him. He must have been feeling so frustrated taking 3 losses in a row in that first set of 5. Able to reset the momentum, get himself a win on the board is gotta be a huge sigh of relief for Snotsss.
But we've seen Out of Pocket today be able to come back from losses, being able to take a deep breath, refocus, and lock back in. He's already talked about it today. Let's see if he can do it again. Let's watch this replay of Snotsss' first game victory here in the Grand Finals.
Yeah, really key play here. Able to counter the Malamar with his own Tinkaton. throwing the Bulldoze before any move was thrown from out of pocket, then able to get the farm down here with a Bulldoze loaded, thrown into out of pocket's Tinkaton, and then getting the very, very tight farm down in the end. Bulldoze, just not enough. That Corviknight has maybe 10% of its health left.
Even, I would say even less than that. I'd call it more like 5, and that Corviknight barely is able to hold on and throw that decisive final sand attack. That game came down to 1 HP, 1 fast attack was all the margin Snotsss needed to claim that victory. And here we are going into game 2 of the bracket reset. We've got Malamar on Jumpluff.
This is an interesting backline for Snotsss. I think this might be the first time that we've seen the Unova Stunfisk come to play, but it is 2 solid answers for the Jumpluff in the back. And you might be thinking, hey, a ground type into a grass type, that's not great. But remember, this Jumpluff only has flying type charged attacks that are going to be resisted by the electric subtyping of that Unova Stunfisk.
And here we see the first Fire Punch, but Snotsss throwing the Sky Attack before Out of Pocket has an opportunity to throw a second Fire Punch. This is the only super effective damage that Out of Pocket has available to him. So I can see both trainers over farming a little bit, and then Out of Pocket going for a Fire Punch, probably going to take this Corviknight down, if not to the red, very close.
Super effective Fire Punch, doing a good amount of damage. Good timing from Snotsss to throw this next Sky Attack before the third Fire Punch was available, or maybe fourth. Not going to be able to pick up a knockout. Pivot into the Malamar by Out of Pocket, going for an Iron Head now, is Snotsss going to do a good amount of chip damage to this Malamar before he pivots out.
And we see a pivot out into his own Malamar. We are in a Malamar mirror, but Out of Pocket's Malamar, less health, but a lot more energy, can actually throw 2 attacks back to back, starting with and we're going to start off here with a foul play.
Both of the moves are going to be neutral damage into each other, and given that foul play does not have the drawback of lowering your attack and defense, foul play is going to be the move of choice early on in this matchup. No real threat of a fast attack down, but Out of Pocket now has a decision. Does he want to utilize the shield, given that he knows that Snotsss has almost a second attack ready? No, he chooses to no shield. He hangs on and is going to reach another move, but no, not before a catch on his own Jumpluff.
The Jumpluff is happy. It looks like Out of Pocket was happy to see that catch be successful, absorbing that foul play damage before Snotsss brings in his own Unovan Stunfisk. You talked about it before, a ground type into a grass type, but Jumpluff, it's going to resist the mud bombs, but it's going to be taking a lot of neutral electric type damage from this Unovan Stunfisk, where Acrobatics, the only attack really that Jumpluff is going to be able to throw, does nothing to this Unovan Stunfisk, nothing to this floppy pancake of a Pokemon.
In the back, Out of Pocket still has both of his Pokemon, as does Snotsss. That Diggersby is still quite healthy, and because Snotsss is forced to throw the electric type attack into this Jumpluff, he has to be very careful to not have a discharge caught on the Diggersby in the back for Out of Pocket.
The switch timer is up, but Out of Pocket opting to throw an attack first. Snotsss still has a shield available, is choosing not to use it here, knowing Acrobatics only going to take him down under low health. All trainers have 2 shields available. We still have a lot of resources left, even though these Pokemon's health are starting to whittle lower and lower.
I don't think the Mud Bomb would have been quite enough to pick up a knockout, but still pulling the shield from Out of Pocket, going straight for these Fire Punches because the Unovan Stunfisk is so low on health. Even a neutral Fire Punch does threaten to put it in a fast attack downrange.
We are at a point where these trainers are starting to be forced to use their shields to protect the low health Pokemon that they have remaining. Out of Pocket has to decide, do I let the Diggersby go? Do I let it absorb this energy? It just barely does, and then Snotsss is going to absorb energy here on the Malamar. Looks like Out of Pocket going for a little bit of an undercharge.
Will that undercharge cost him his Diggersby? No, the Diggersby hangs on. Will Snotsss come in with the Thunder Shock down? Those are double resisted Thunder Shocks. No, coming in with the Corviknight, resisting the quick attacks, getting farmed down. In comes the Jumpluff. Jumpluff's resisted Fairy Wings are able to take out the Corviknight. Now it's just 1 Pokemon remaining for Snotsss.
all he has left is this floppy pancake, and Snotsss decides to just let this acrobatics fly, and it is going to be nearly enough to knock out. I think just kind of recognizing, and actually, I was wondering, this match seemed to be going back and forth and back and forth. I was wondering, are we going to see the timer decide this match? And we were very close to it.
Yeah, letting that acrobatics go, I think, might have been necessary. I forget exactly how much energy OutOfPoket still had on his Malamar. It feels like a year ago that it was last on the field, but man, long battle, really back and forth fight all the way through. Attempted catches on both sides, really patient play on both sides. We see that there was nearly a move loaded from OutOfPoket, so I think it would have been very cleanly able to reach that charged attack if Snotsss did not have two moves loaded at the end of the game, which he did not.
Can you remind us really quickly, just for everybody in the audience or watching at home, what would have happened if the timer had to decide the match?
So if the timer counts down all the way to 0, you do not necessarily get just a tie. The first thing that is counted is the number of Pokemon on the side of the field for each, and given that OutOfPoket had 2 Pokemon remaining, had that timer hit 0, that would have been a win for him. Let's go into game number 3 here. This is not decisive just quite yet. 1 game apiece for Snotsss and OutOfPoket. This is a pretty good lead for OutOfPoket with ability to throw Fire Punch's super effective damage into this Corviknight.
OutOfPoket doesn't have anything else that's super effective into Corviknight, and hardly anything that's even neutral to throw into it. So seeing the Corviknight here rather than on something like his Tinkaton is definitely something that is a relief for OutOfPoket. Diggersby throwing a Fire Punch is going to start whittling away the health of the Corviknight up in the sky. Corviknight going to fight back, though, with these sky attacks.
I think the last time we saw this matchup, Snotsss was able to catch a Fire Punch onto his Malamar. No Malamar in the back. If he wants to try to catch a move, it's going to be on the Furret. I can't imagine he would ever want to catch a move on his Tinkaton.
No, especially then you're putting Tinkaton in kind of a situation that it might not really want to be in, depending on what OutOfPoket might have in the back.
OutOfPoket is looking in a prime position here. Will he decide to stay in when he sees the Furret come in? Yes, he does. He has the Tinkaton in the back. Tinkaton is going to be able to wall off all of the damage from this Furret, and Snotsss is playing up with his back against the wall. However, if he's able to peel away shields, maybe his own Tinkaton could sweep in the endgame.
Oh, trying to maybe get a quick Fairy Wind down, but we see an immediate reaction from OutOfPoket to bring in his own Tinkaton, and we are now back in a Tinkaton mirror. Snotsss is getting to throw his energy first, which could be really helpful, depending on if these Bulldozes debuff. It doesn't sound like that first one did.
It did not, and really interesting from my perspective that OutOfPoket was willing to bring in its own Tinkaton to get the mirror match here, given that it does so well into Furret. Bulldoze now being thrown by Snotsss, hoping and praying for that defense drop so that the Fairy Winds and the next Bulldoze can do a little bit more damage.
This is looking really good for OutOfPoket with that Malamar in the back, being able to throw super effective superpowers into the Furret. We did see a defense drop on OutOfPoket's own Tinkaton.
Bulldoze coming through, shielded up by Snotsss, trying to preserve this Tinkaton for a potential play later on. Bulldoze now going through into OutOfPoket. This is going to threaten a potential knockout given the defense was dropped earlier.
As it did threaten the knockout, we are starting to see shields get peeled away, and that is something that is going to be critical for Snotsss to do. He needs these charge attacks to go somewhere. We see a superpower land and then a swap into Furret. Now this is resisted damage, but Furret has a lot of energy that it can potentially throw. So OutOfPoket has to make a decision. Does he use his final Protect Shield here? No, allows the Swift to land, and it does knock out.
Trailblaze is now loaded, going into the Malamar. I can't imagine this will pick up a shield. OutOfPoket's going to really want to preserve that shield for the Tinkaton in the back. It does have super effective damage with that Play Rough. Superpower just about reached. Will he decide to throw it early, or will he hold on to his energy to try to maximize the amount of damage that these Psy Waves are doing?
Snots decides to pull his Protect Shield here, keeping the Furret healthy and being able to throw another attack, actually going for another Trailblaze, because that now these Sucker Punches are going to do even more damage. And it looks like Furret is still going to be able to throw a few, tries to make a catch, and does catch something, but it's the superpower, not a foul play.
This is going to be able to pick up the knockout on the Tinkaton. Tinkaton is now off the field. One more Psywave to pick up the victory. OutOfPoket is one win away from becoming the champion, but Snotsss is going to do everything in his power to stop him.
These have been such exciting battles. You can tell these two trainers are phenomenal at the game. They are playing the best of their abilities. OutOfPoket right now just playing a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. I'm not sure what Snotsss needs to be able to do to wrestle the momentum back.
I think he needs to get his Corviknight away from that Diggersby. We've seen just how good that matchup is, even though it's resisting the quick attacks, even though Fire Punch is not same type attack bonus, Diggersby just dominates that matchup time and time again in the zero shield scenario. Bulldoze a little bit in favor for Snotsss here, getting that defense drop. However, he just wasn't able to really take as much advantage of that as he might have liked. Swift here going into the Tinkaton to pick up the knockout. I think maybe I would have preferred to see him go straight Swift into the Malamar. Although the Sucker Punches were building up in damage, he might have been able to reach more charge attacks, allow OutOfPoket to get less farm. But let's go into game number 4.
Game number 4, this could be game point for OutOfPoket. Snotsss needs to win this one in order to force a decisive game number 5. OutOfPoket going straight for the superpower into the Tinkaton to try to get some damage, start to get some damage rolling before swapping in his Diggersby. And for the very first time in the bracket reset, we see the Lapras come in.
Yeah, Lapras is not going to be able to be punished by the Malamar on OutOfPoket. OutOfPoket had to switch out of that lead matchup. Scorching Sands going to do good neutral damage. The attack does drop, a bit unfortunate for Snotsss, but able to throw the Sparkling Aria here to do good, super effective damage back at the Diggersby.
And this super effective damage, this is some of the only super effective damage this Diggersby has seen today. That Diggersby actually is going to be able to reach a Scorching Sands here. It's not going to be enough to knock out, so Snotsss does not feel pressured to put a Protect Shield here. Although these quick attacks are going to start to add up. And we got an attack fall. That is unfortunate. So Lapras getting as much energy as possible before throwing the Sparkling Aria. I think it's still going to be enough. Even with an attack drop, it's going to be really close, but I think no! With the attack drop, it wasn't quite enough. 2 attack drops, that's right. Maybe 1 attack drop would have done it, but not 2.
Fire Punch coming through. This is going to allow OutOfPoket to win switch advantage in a matchup that he generally should not have. Quick Attack is going to be resisted by the Steel typing of this Tinkaton, which has so much energy. In comes the Tinkaton for Pocket. It's going to be a Bulldoze thrown. Actually, I think either Pokemon that came in, Snotsss would have been happy to throw this move because he was going to try to get for that defense drop. It does not look like he gets it this time. Lady Luck seems to be on OutOfPoket's side.
And we're going to see another Bulldoze. Is this one going to be the defense drop, taking his Tinkaton down into half health, but no defense drop to be found?
Bulldoze coming through once again for Snotsss, throwing before OutOfPoket chooses to. This is not going to threaten a knockout. It's maybe potentially not going to threaten another defense drop. This time it does not happen once again.
And that is a rough roll of the dice for Snotsss. Snotsss being forced now to use a Bulldoze to protect this Tinkaton. He has a full health Malamar in the back still, but he probably needs this Tinkaton at a lot lower health in order to even potentially Psywave down.
I think a Psywave down may be close soon. I think maybe attempting to catch the next Bulldoze is possible. Actually throwing his first, making OutOfPoket the driver in this end game, no shielding, putting everything onto this Malamar in the back end. I think Snotsss is going to have to throw a Bulldoze, hopefully sooner rather than later. Hope to finally get this defense drop that he's been fishing for all game long.
And we finally see a Protect Shield from OutOfPoket, maybe afraid of that Bulldoze, and then we see they swap in from Malamar.
Malamar has been shown to be able to take 2 charge attacks quite comfortably from full health. A reminder, it is triple resisted Psywaves First one goes through for Out of Pocket. It looks like Snotsss is slightly ahead, or slightly above one charge attack at this point. He might be able to reach two, one to pull the shield and one to land on the Malamar for Out of Pocket. I don't know if it's going to be enough damage, as Out of Pocket's Malamar is just about 50% health.
Yeah, that is as close to 50% health as I think it can be. Then we see a superpower actually on the side of Snotsss with no protect shields remaining.
I think superpower is just a little bit more damage than foul play in this matchup, but it's not enough to pick up the knockout. Foul play coming through for Out of Pocket. It's going to pick up the knockout, but can a fairy wind down happen here? Does Snots's Tinkaton have enough health left? It's going to be 1, 2, 3, and the Tinkaton picks up the knockout and guarantees a game number 5 here in Milwaukee.
The crowd is roaring. Snotsss able to keep the dream alive and able to continue through to game number 5 here in the Grand Finals reset, trying to wrestle back just a little bit of momentum, bringing Lapras off the bench for the first time in the reset and still relying on that Tinkaton and Malamar combination. Out of Pocket really relying on Tinkaton, Diggersby, and Malamar. We've seen it time and time again. Has Snotsss figured out the formula to get around it?
I think in this game it worked. Realistically, because he was able to get the Lapras away from the Malamar, it was a lead scenario that Out of Pocket has played a number of times today, where he's pivoting out of a bad matchup after throwing the superpower from his own Malamar. Snotsss is just staring across the table, staring at Out of Pocket, staring at Lady Luck standing behind him, saying, I don't need you. I can still win. How many bulldozes did he throw? He didn't get a single attack drop, or excuse me, defense drop. How many Scorching Sands did he receive where he got an attack drop? Just absolutely overcoming every obstacle to bring us to a decisive game number 5 here.
And our trainers are locked in, everybody. This is it. Let's hear it in the crowd. Snotsss versus Out of Pocket. This is the last game of the Milwaukee Regional Championships. We've got Tinkaton into Shadow for Alligator.
Out of Pocket bringing Feraligatr onto the field for one of the first times in this set. Tinkaton going to not really care for this matchup because Hydro Cannon is such a potent move, though Snotsss does have the ability to go for a Bulldoze bait, or he could go for the heavy-hitting Play Rough. Goes for a Bulldoze bait here.
Ooh, and Out of Pocket shields. This is going to be critical, allowing Tinkaton to get even more energy. The Bulldoze is swung, and a defense drop is finally made for Snotsss. This could be critical. A Shadow for Alligator is so low defensively, adding that defense drop on top could be key.
Going for the Play Rough, waiting a turn to ensure that it lands on this Shadow for Alligator. Out of Pocket now utilizing his second shield. The Shadow for Alligator is likely going to be able to pivot out here after this Tinkaton faints, and it has a good amount of energy remaining.
But that is the final Protect Shield of the day for Out of Pocket. There is nothing left to hide behind, where Snotsss has this Lapras that can comfortably absorb this energy.
And no Malamar on that side. However, Malamar does not really want to face a Lapras up this much energy. Sparkling Aria going to be the move of choice if it is thrown into this Tinkaton right before Out of Pocket's able to reach a charge attack. 2 Sparkling Arias loaded. I don't think together they'll be enough to knock out. However, maybe it'll put it in range for a Psywave down later.
And the Cycling and Sparkling Aria is going to land. Out of Pocket spending both of those shields on that Shadow for Alligator very early in the game. Tinkaton down very, very low before it is able to throw this Play Rough. Snotsss has to make a decision. You've only got 1 Protect Shield remaining. Is Lapras going to receive it? No. Lapras goes down really low in health. We see a quick pivot into the Malamar. This is a tough Psywave down.
Snotsss going up against the Tinkaton. Play Rough is reached. He's a little bit frustrated that it was able to be reached, able to get the Psywave down after, but no, a pivot into the Shadow for Alligator. For Alligator still had a charge attack. This is not going to be able to threaten a knockout. I think a Psywave down will be possible, but there is an incredibly bulky Diggersby in the back.
And that Snotsss has set up his Malamar with 2 superpowers. Is that enough to take out the Diggersby? We have 1 superpower, and then could maybe do we have the switch timer available?
I think that would be key in order to reduce the amount of damage he's taking from the quick attacks, but I think he recognizes no switch clock up means he does not have a win condition. Fire Punch is coming through from OutOfPoket, securing game number 5.
And OutOfPoket with a sigh of relief is your Milwaukee regional champion.
Congratulations, OutOfPoket, for an intense losers run. He said this is the very first time he's ever been able to make top 8 coming in from the loser side. It's the very first time he's made grand finals coming in from the loser side, but he's also been able to secure the grand championship here in Milwaukee in the year 2025.